for joining us again. We're with Delegate C.T. Wilson, who represents us as District 28 in the House of Delegates, and he is running for re-election. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
What are the three biggest county issues that can be addressed at the State House?
And I think from a state level, the reckless overcrowding and sprawl, I know that's a county issue, but it's also a state issue. My committee and my subcommittee helped develop a tier mapping system because Maryland, as we grow, we're seeing that we're losing a lot of our state treasures. And also a lot of folks who move to certain areas, they move there for those treasures and they're losing them. So I think that the reckless overcrowding and sprawl is something that is, while as a county issue, is also dealt with at the state level. We're one Maryland, we have that tier mapping system that we're trying to get all the counties to go under so we don't lose any more to urban sprawl. And also that bleeds into the second one about the transportation and road construction, because that's state dollars that we have to get. We have to secure those state dollars, and sometimes it's very difficult as a small county to do that. You only have a few voices. You don't have the Montgomery County, the Prince George's County, Baltimore City voices. So I think that the transportation issues, especially Charles County, we are probably one of the most desperately impacted and disparately treated counties in the state right now as far as financial dollars. So I believe that that's also another huge issue as far as the state issues, things we can remedy on a state level. And lastly, I think, and this I'm a little side on this one because of being a former prosecutor. I think that crime and victim rights, because mostly crime is always dealt with on a state level. Criminal laws are always drafted on a state level, and I'm a firm believer that crime is one of those huge impactors in the community because if you're not safe, you're not going to want to move there, and if you don't want to move there, businesses don't want to come, and what you end up attracting are these very low-level businesses and, that appeal to the lowest common denominator, and people do not move to our county for that. So I think we need to be working on enhancing our criminal penalties. Mercy is wonderful. However, justice needs to be sacrosanct, and victims deserve rights too. And I say, being up in the State House, it was one of the things I was stunned is that it's always about the defendant. You never really hear about the victim and what we can do to help the victim, what we can do to make sure that these crimes don't occur again. So I believe that that's, as far as the three that would go with, be reckless: the overcrowding, the transportation, road construction, and crime and victims' rights.
Thank you very much. With your background and experience, what sets you apart from the field?
Well, I know that people tend to say we have too many lawyers in politics, and I agree. I mean, but I am a lawyer, and I will say that people have to remember that all bills are drafted in legalese. They're drafted by lawyers because you have to have the caveats. There's a difference between a shall and a may, and it's a drastic one. Depending on where the comma is, can define an entire bill. And I was trained in the legal profession, and it is important because otherwise what you're doing is you're relying on other people to tell you. And as people have seen on the House floor, I have caught many criminal bills that were actually misrepresented. And they said they were one thing, but it was something totally else, and totally something else. And the impact was much different than people would have imagined. So being able to actually read the bills and parse through the language to ensure that we're getting a good bill the first time is important. Additionally, being a litigator gives me the opportunity to actually convince individuals on the floor. So when I fight for my county, I don't do it from my seat. I don't do it by the push of a button. And I don't always do it from behind the scenes. I will stand there on the House floor to the point where the Speaker of the House has asked me on many occasions, we know you're not going to vote for the bill, but please don't stand up. Because he doesn't want me to influence and unduly influence the floor. And I don't mean that in a negative way or a power-grabbing way. I merely mean that my ability to convince 14 jurors applies to 140 people as well. I'm getting my point across. And lastly, I think growing up in the foster care system, I've lived a life of political oversight, or lack of political oversight, where good intentions don't necessarily make good bills, and people suffer. I know that. I do not forget. I work with foster kids every day, and that's just an example of what happens when you don't follow through. It's kind of like the healthcare system. It was a great idea. The rollout, not so great. And you need better oversight and accountability because people suffer. The bottom line is not money. It can never be money. And I know some people hate me for saying that, but it's always got to be people. So for me, I think my life growing up in struggle and also my legal background is what sets me apart from, I guess, the rest of the field.
Thank you very much. What are the state policies and initiatives that are important to Charles County residents, and how will you address them?
Well, I guess the kind of go back to question one. For me, it was the sprawl the whole tier mapping system. That's a state policy, making sure that we become one Maryland. And that was actually developed in my committee. It's one of those things, again, about ways to protect our county and our state from this growth and this repeated sprawl, and understanding that when you have sprawl, not only do you have more people and a higher demand on the county resources, but there's also the roads and the highways, which affect the state monies, because that's their state money, that's state funded. So I'm just a big fan of enforcing what we have. They're not always perfect, and they don't always affect us in the best way. That's the problem. You're not going to get everything you want, but overall, holistically, it is a good idea to start controlling the way that these counties are developing. And although there is some local autonomy, and God bless them, I know that's important, we are a state though. We are one Maryland, so that money that you're going to ask for from the state, you need to be accountable for how you're going to spend it, and it can't just be for sprawl. Again, so that goes obviously, bleeds into the transportation, because transportation is a big problem in Maryland. Everybody going to DC or going inside the Beltway. And Charles County is definitely impacted by that. We need more transportation monies. We need to stop talking. I appreciate the light rail, great idea. Hopefully I'll be alive when it happens. However, for the next 10 years, we need to work on rapid bus systems, maybe 301, 210, having a bus lane that goes one way depending on the traffic, that can take our citizens back and forth, getting the overpasses. And I've been doing that every time I get a chance to negotiate the casinos, getting $15 million a year infinitum. That was my request in order to vote for the casino, that they always have to upgrade 210. $15 million a year, which is not a lot of money, but that's infinitum to upgrade 210. So we can get overpasses. We can get overpasses on Kirby. We can get overpasses fixing the 301 exchange, that little mess they have up there with the 3 lights in the road. Those are the things that I've been negotiating. So I think that's where I work in with that. And also, I believe, again, protecting our wetlands and our natural resources. That's what I've been doing, supporting all those bills. And lastly, crime. I fight on the floor every year trying to make sure we don't weaken our criminal laws and that our victims have the justice that they deserve, in addition to the defendants having the resources when they get out. And I wish the citizens would listen, because you can listen to any debate, even if it's old, on the floor. I wish people would listen and they would see it's not just something I do for my seat, and they're not just good ideas. This is who I am, and I fight heartily every session for our citizens.
Thank you very much. There's been much discussion on the deteriorating relationship between county officials and the state administration. If elected, what can you do to bridge that gap?
Well, United States Army Non-Commissioned Officers' creed is be the example. And in this fashion, be the example by not taking things so personally. I really believe we've gotten so far down this hole in the county that if an idea comes from somebody that you might not like, you won't even listen to the idea. And we suffer as a county because of that, because we basically got, I would say it's like the West Side Story. It's like the Jets and the Sharks. There's us and them. There's nobody in the middle. And sometimes good ideas come from people you don't like. That doesn't mean they're bad ideas. That doesn't mean you have to discount the idea just because you don't particularly get along with the individual. And what I've always done, will continue to do, is not take things personal. If you disagree with me, you disagree with me on a policy issue, that's fine. If you don't like me as a person, that doesn't mean that you can't generate a good idea. Because I don't want our county and our community to suffer because I'm being pig-headed, because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And what I'm supposed to be doing is legislating for my county, not trying to have personal vendetta or promote my political career by killing somebody else's. So I think that's what I've been doing, and I will continue to do that. You can't tell people, you can't tell your kids to do the right thing and ignore it, and then you act like a baby every time there's a meeting because somebody else came up with a better idea, or they came up with it first, or they stole your idea. There are a multitude of bills that were taken from me on the floor in somebody else's name the next year and they passed. That's awesome to me. It's not a penalty. My idea became law. I protected kids under somebody else's name. Why would I hold a grudge on that person? When the law got passed, the bill was passed, my idea became law. And I think that we as a community need to demand that from our elected officials. There's no camps. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to be buddies. We don't have to hang out. But we have to work together. And not for the next election, not for the next goofy, political ambition that somebody has, but for the now. And that's what I'll continue to do.
Thank you very much. We're going to have our wild card question. There's 3 questions in here. If you could just pick one, and I will read that to you. Thank you. What process do you have in place to ensure all constituents receive a response when contacting your office via email, phone, or written letter?
It's a great question. I think the process is pretty given in that it takes a while to develop the first year. So you have to find a good legislative staff, and you're very limited. This is not at a state level. We are very limited in resources. We have approximately $40,000 a year for supplies, furniture, and staff, and that's all year round. And that means you have to have somebody answering your phones. You have to figure out when you want to do it part-time versus full-time. What I've done is during the session, obviously I have a full-time assistant and several college students that you don't have to pay that much, and we call them interns. But basically you have somebody that works for me 3 days out of the week. She reviews my emails, she schedules appointments, and she gets back to the citizens. But that takes a while to do because it's not just good intentions. You have to find somebody who's good at it. And it's hard to find somebody who's really good at that job. So, I mean, the process I think is pretty simplified for everybody. You know, you just get somebody in, and what I try to do as much as I can, when somebody emails me with their cell phone number or calls me, I try to actually call them personally. Sometimes it gets overwhelming. I definitely focus on my constituent services over just, a lot of people call throughout the state or even sometimes throughout the nation. But when it comes to constituents, I try to call them back. I try to personally talk to them, even if they don't want to agree with me, even if they're going to badmouth me. I'm fine with that. I'm a tough boy. I can take it. But so basically having a strong legislative staff, which again takes years to build, and also trying to personally reach out and touch these individuals, because you learn something from everybody every day. Even if you think you're solid on an issue, there's also always a point of view that you may not have thought about. And so I say this to every citizen: please, God, call me, because I won't know if you don't tell me. And when you're up in Annapolis and these bills are going around, you've got your common sense, you've got the fringe groups that are very interested, and you've got the lobbyists. Very seldom would you have an average citizen say, look, this is how I feel about this issue. And we miss out. We miss out on a lot of things, and we're forced to make these judgments. I try to be as educated as possible, but I actually rely on citizen contact, because either, I say it all the time, I either have to vote my constituency or my convictions. And if my convictions differ from my constituents, I best be able to explain it. And if I can't explain it, I need to keep it to myself and vote for my constituents. That's my job, because we are not sent up there to be kings or kingmakers. We are merely representatives, and I don't forget that.
Delegate Wilson, thank you very much and good luck in the election. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.